Hello, dear listeners. This is John Branch, professor of marketing at Michigan Ross of the University of Michigan. It's great to have you here for another episode of Breaking Schemas. Unfortunately, absent today is my co host and co author and co conspirator, Professor Marcus Collins. But we have a great episode today. On Breaking Schemas is Knox Cameron, alumnus of the University of Michigan, superstar soccer player Wolverine. Welcome, Knox.
Thank you for having me, John. Good to see you again. Always a pleasure to chat.
Thanks very much. Let's just jump right in, starting first with who are you? Where are you from? What's the news?
Love it. Thank you. Thank you for that question. But yeah, I was born and raised in Kingston, and that was an amazing experience. I have fond memories of being raised in something different than what I've come to know today. And then migrated to the United States when I was about 9 years old. My family moved to the Bronx, New York, and that migration actually, John, occurred in the wintertime. So as you can imagine, moving from a tropical climate like a Jamaica to then in the middle of winter in New York City, that was quite shocking. But certainly it was something that was welcomed because it provided my family an opportunity to grow and realize the American dream, quite frankly.
Yeah, two interesting things about Jamaica. I recently visited Kingston and had an amazing time there. Curried goat,
Of course.
um, absolutely fantastic. And I happened to be there on the weekend of the National Athletics Championships. And
Yep.
for any of you out there who know Jamaica and Usain Bolt, it's more than that. Like the entire country is track and field crazy. So you must have been a little bit of a disappointment to the homeland that you became a soccer player rather than a runner.
And I would say a rather slow soccer player at that, okay? So, yes, further adding to the disappointment of my country, but yes, that's an interesting story. So there are segments of my life, and they were actually in and around, like, the 9-year chunks. So the first 9 years I mentioned, moving from Kingston to New York City, and then right at around 18 years old, having the opportunity to be enrolled at the University of Michigan. But that really started with my soccer journey. And so I was lucky to have been offered a scholarship to the university. The interesting thing about U of M's team at that point in time, they were a very young team, having started its varsity program in 2000, and I was coming in the subsequent year in 2001. So when you think about um, an institution with such rich history and legacy, um, yet this dichotomy of a startup sort of environment that I was coming into. And when you think about breaking the mold, John, that was my first foray or vision into wanting to break the mold. Okay, so I was a highly recruited athlete coming out of a high school, and I could have attended one of a number of great soccer institutions and programs and continued with their legacy and so on and so forth. But for me, it was an interesting opportunity to be able to lead a startup,
Mm.
essentially, right? It was a startup organization that was labeled a men's soccer team, but we had the backing, so you could think about, your VCs in some capacity. That to me is the background that is the institution that is the University of Michigan. So I knew I had the comfort, the network, the community of Michigan behind me, but also knew I had this incredible opportunity and responsibility to set a pathway that was brand new. And I saw my parents do it in terms of their migration story from Jamaica to New York. And so I had great precedence and inspiration in my journey coming to U of M. And so that's what appealed to me about the U of M opportunity. It was, man, rich history, bunch of legacy, but also, hey, you can make your mark here on something brand new.
That's very interesting. I published a book a few years ago with some other co-authors, and we made the argument, which is pretty much the word these days, that entrepreneurs are made, not born. That is to say, you can teach entrepreneurship. You do not need to be hatched as an entrepreneur. So I'd like you to dig in a little bit more about that. What do you think there was about you who you were willing to take a bet on something like a 1-year-old varsity program? Is it all down to your parents' immigrant story? Is there something maybe you were indeed born with, flying in the face of the wisdom of entrepreneurs are made, not born? What do you think really attracted you to this opportunity of the startup culture of a new varsity program?
I've always sought out startup-like cultures. Okay, that has been a thing. If folks track my soccer career, the great Detroit City Football Club, DCFC, in Detroit today, um, when I was post my Major League Soccer career, I joined their program in their very first year. I scored their very first goal. And so when you think about starting their program from 500 folks at Cass Tech to now what they do in Hamtramck and a vision for something greater, that was embedded within me. That got me excited, John. The opportunity to come to Michigan got me excited. And now, as I think about some of the roles that I've inherited at DTE, where I currently serve and have been serving over the greater part of 15 years, um, over the last 5 years of those 15, I also launched another startup in our voluntary renewable energy program that is called MIGreenPower. And so, at different phases of my life, I have never been excited by being a part of something existing. And um, I've always been more excited about pushing the envelope, about creation, about development, and about channeling just that entrepreneurial spirit. And I will say, yeah, though I had inspiration from my parents, I fundamentally believe that is within me, the establishment of something and originating something and then watching it flourish from there.
That's great. I cannot let you gloss over the MLS stuff. No, seriously,
Understood.
I've known you for quite some time. I know you as a very humble guy, but this is Breaking Schemas at the University of Michigan. We are known as leaders in the best. So let's brag on you for a little bit here. I know that you were one of the most decorated soccer stars here at the University of Michigan on the Wolverine soccer team, and then went on to an MLS career, unfortunately in that state just below us, if I understand correctly. Um, so just say a little bit more about that, and don't be shy, and don't be humble. Brag on yourself a little bit.
That's oh goodness. So yes, my soccer journey, I will say it's been filled with a number of accomplishments and recognition. But my goal at a very young age was just that. My dream was to be a professional soccer player. And my entire focus, my entire upbringing, my entire mindset was geared towards that. I think my parents helped me recognize very quickly that I did have a talent. And so, yeah, I knew it was a responsibility at a very young age. Also, being the eldest of three boys, you have this incredible responsibility of leadership within that. And then you think about being immigrants, black kids being raised in the Bronx. You start to layer on how many obstacles and so on and so forth that you could be faced with in order to achieve this ultimate goal. U of M once again provided me the platform and opportunity, and with that, I was able to achieve some fundamentally awesome things and some first of its kind type things. The first men's soccer player to achieve first team All American, for instance. I take great pride in that. I was recognized as the Big Ten Player of the Year in 2003, along with garnering many first team recognitions across the Big Ten conference. So I had a pretty successful playing career, I will say, at Michigan, and then that set the stage for the opportunity with the Columbus Crew in Major League Soccer. So, John, you're absolutely right. I had to spend time in Ohio. Okay, I don't brag about it. In fact, I don't even bring it up often, to be honest, just jokingly. I have great friends in Columbus, but that was the realization of a dream, the realization of all of the investments that were made in me, in myself, the sacrifices, and so on and so forth, to be able to ultimately get to that point, and then to be on the highest level in your respective country. Yeah, there is a high sense of accomplishment there. But I will say through that journey, it also provided the greatest learning experience, John, because if you think about if folks were to track my career getting up to that point, and you left a blank space for about 10 years or so, someone would easily say, hey, man, this Knox Cameron guy would have had a 10 to 12-year soccer career. He would have achieved many of those things that he achieved in college in the professional ranks. Okay. And why I say it was an awesome learning experience was because ultimately for me, I failed at my dream. Okay. I failed at my dream because I didn't deploy that same said mindset that got me there. I actually thought that when I was there, then I had accomplished something. And I think that was the right mindset. The mindset that I should have had was, hey, I've achieved this thing that I've always wanted. Now the journey really starts. So I take great pride in my playing career, but I even take a greater sense of takeaway in the learnings that came from that I'm now implementing in my current life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing there and bragging a little bit. Great.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the culture of the MLS because at the time when you joined, it was still relatively new as a professional league.
Of course.
Did it also have that entrepreneurial startup feel to it? And if so, was this an attractive part of playing in the MLS for you?
I would say so. Yes, it was certainly when you think about all hands on deck. It was an all hands on deck type of approach. You certainly felt a tighter knit community as MLS was um, expanding and starting up its operations. And yeah, we were on the front end of it, and there were pros and cons of any startup, John. And there were pros and cons of our startup environment in Major League Soccer as well. Um, I was blessed to play in the very first soccer specific stadium in the United States, and that was Crew Stadium,
Hmm.
and that was really cool. To not play on a field with football lines, like those were new kind of developments in and around that time, right? When we were traveling and playing what was then the New York Metro Stars, they're now the New York Red Bull. We would be in the Meadowlands, right? You're playing on football fields. We would go to Soldier Field in Chicago and play the Chicago Fire. You're playing on football fields. And so to play in Crew Stadium in Ohio, I guess that was one of the things that the Columbus area offered that was unique in nature and allowed it to stand apart positively. So yeah, there were very much elements of the startup culture. And then you think about just the uncertainties that come with that. The financials come to play, John, and you're thinking about developing something. And once again, we talk about the backing, the VC backing. Certainly, MLS had strong financial support, but it had to operate very efficiently.
Hmm.
There's no doubt about it. And you look across their model for salary and so on. There were a lot of just bespoke approaches that MLS had to take that was very unique to MLS as opposed to its NFL counterparts, NHL counterparts, because you did not have the financial comfort at that point in time. There were no major TV deals. The likes of the Messis weren't there yet. The likes of the Beckhams weren't there yet. And so, yeah, $200 million contracts were not a thing. Uh, $500,000 contracts were not a thing in that point in time. And so, those are also things that I weighed in my decision as to when I was stepping away from playing. Essentially, I was tired of being broke at that point, but also being a top-notch athlete. It was a weird sort of conundrum. And I decided to step aside a few short years after and say, hey, let me put this U of M degree to work and go on to influence and effectively lead the U of M ethos in another field, right? And in this particular case, it is the energy field, but the same rules apply.
I was going to joke that MLS certainly was the startup mentality because you were working your butt off and taking no salary, right?
Oh, well, I had to include that part. That's a factual statement. Things were tight.
Yeah. You provided a nice opportunity for a segue there to your energy career, and dear listeners, this is how Knox and I actually met, um, because you might know that Michigan Ross has this thing called the MAP project, multidisciplinary action projects, and Knox was sponsoring one from DTE for our weekend MBA students, and we met through that. But tell us a little bit more about that switch from MLS to kind of entrepreneurial startup world, and now to energy, and how that came about.
Yeah, so this I will say is my next sort of critical milestone moment, and certainly when we're talking about breaking all things systematic, this falls certainly in line, John. When you think about professional athletes um, and their transition away from the game, some are more graceful than others. And I had that challenge of transitioning, but I also didn't have $100 million in the bank as someone who would have played 10 years in the NFL or NBA and then retired. And so those folks, just to be clear, have their own issues and challenges with transitioning away from uh, a sport and game that you have identified yourself within. You have been praised and recognized, and your entire value system has been constructed around.
Mm,
And so it's an interesting metamorphosis as you step away from that. And at the time, I had not completed my undergraduate degree. When I was drafted, I was in my senior year, and I had vacated 18 credits that still needed to be completed. So that was also in the back of my mind as well. And I didn't give myself the best opportunity to sort of hit the ground running, so to speak. So think about a young athlete who's had a storied collegiate career, but some short years after is having a in-depth conversation with the coaching staff at the professional team who is now alerting you to the fact that your contract is no longer valid, right? That is a very nice way of saying thank you, but you're released from our team.
mm,
Okay, and so that was a very sobering experience of realizing that your dreams could very well be um, shattered, so to speak. And so it was tough, right? And that transition was a difficult one, but took about a year or so completing the undergraduate degree. And then the major thing that was in the back of my mind as I was transitioning was I wanted a space. I wanted a career that was anchored around safety and security. As I thought about the professional environment, professional athletics, it's very volatile, right? Gone today or here today, gone tomorrow, so to speak. You hear the adage about the NFL, not for long, right? So those things are real, right? And they could be unsettling for many athletes at the highest of levels, and I was in sort of the same boat, and I wanted safety and security. And so as I completed my undergraduate degree and then pursued the career, energy and the utilities came to mind. And DTE provided me an opportunity to learn and grow fundamentally. And I've spent the greater part of 15 years developing my career, learning the industry, and serving at a company that has been around for hundreds of years, over 150 years, in fact. So I think we certainly check the box there from a safety and security perspective. But very quickly, that objective sort of, once we figured out that that was a thing, just the natural inclination for more, the natural inclination to impact, make an impact on the business, make an impact on others. That was eating away at me, right? And I then sort of had the same set of mindset and pursuits as when I was actually on the field. Hey, what does it take to be a first team performer now in the energy and utility sector? What does it mean to be the Big Ten player of the year? What does a first team All American performer look like? And then what does a failed professional soccer career and all of the learnings, how do you put that also into the mix to deliver on what it is that you're doing today? And so that's the mindset, John, as I think about the work at DTE. And I've had the incredible pleasure of learning from folks, partnering with incredible people, and it's a very, very important line of business when you think about serving electricity to 2.3 million electric customers and their power remaining on, because you understand the problems when it is not on. Okay. And so I've come to appreciate the mission of the organization, and certainly on board to be living it.
Your last comment there reminds me of the old adage about nobody notices the elevator until it's not working, right? And certainly we know here in the state of Michigan, with our ice storms and our heat storms and branches knocking over wires, how that adage plays out. Um, I want to go back just a second to when we met, and you were doing something so fascinating, which I think ties our entire discussion together. And that is how you were trying to be entrepreneurial inside this safe and secure utilities business.
Of course.
And I'm sure that our listeners will be fascinated. It's the MIGreenPower, and in particular around scope one, scope two, scope three emissions, and how you were really, let's say, in a startup mindset, entrepreneurializing. I just made that verb up, but trying to innovate around a new business model in order to effectively change the way we think about sustainability in the electricity industry. Tell us a little bit more about that program, because it is fascinating.
Yes, I completely agree. Man, so about 5 years ago, I had an awesome opportunity to leverage the skills I had gained from a prior role in leading a sales team. And so I was approached about a role within the company to sell renewables. And so I was like, that's an interesting concept. You're selling power in a new way. And what does it all mean? And having sales in a utility environment just seems counterintuitive anyway. Aren't you guys a regulated monopoly? Right? Like there are just a lot of interesting nuances and so on and so forth. But 5 years ago, this opportunity came along to develop a team. And you do not get this opportunity quite often, where you're presented with an objective, you're presented with a budget, but then you're also presented with this blank slate for what the team would look like to help the organization grow. Okay. And so I was asked to develop a team to support the MIGreenPower program. But it's an interesting program, John, because all utility providers, given the considerations around climate change, has to think about emissions. That is just a natural kind of fundamental thought process here. How are you thinking about your environmental stewardship as an organization, as a provider, and how are you helping the world be better? And so the program was launched because DTE, we knew one, we need to construct renewable energy to support this clean energy transformation in time. But the program is interesting in that you can go to private subscribers who want these renewable energy attributes and will pay for it, separate and aside from the utility's broader general rate base of customers. So it introduces an incredible value proposition in that you can develop, construct, help the utility's earnings profile, which helps all of its investors. And that's a beautiful thing. You can help the end use customer who wants these environmental attributes. And while doing so, you can help your affordability benefits to your non-subscribing customers. So we viewed the program as an incredible value proposition, and my team and I began to construct an entire vision around this program, right? And its benefits. And quite frankly, we saw um, astronomically more benefits than there were negatives. So that was the first thing. And so we began to hire folks who were passionate about the cause, who were passionate about the objective that was in front of us here. We can help the environment, we can help the company, and we can help all of our other 2.3 million customers who may not want to invest in this particular type of project. And so to us, this was a unicorn, quite frankly, in the utility environment. And we got everybody charged up about it. Okay. And so we've been running now 5 years long. And as you think about the partners who we've had along the way, given that we were driving on a sales function, the list is incredible. So happy to name some here because it not only speaks to the value of the program, but actually speaks to those entities and their vision for a cleaner future that we all can enjoy. But our largest customers today, Ford Motor Company, Stellantis, General Motors, the University of Michigan. I can go on and on and on about the folks who have established an environmental leadership position and are driving forward on that. Okay. And it gives me an immense amount of pleasure um, to know that the team that we help construct is at the intersection of those transactions to help the corporation once again help these end use customers and help DTE's customers at large. And of course, we're doing it for the broader benefit, which is to help our environment.
Knox, thank you for sharing. It was an amazing and continues to be an amazing program. And I think it captures what I believe is the theme of our episode together, Knox, which is, I'm going to coin it here, mindset as the disruptor. Mindset as the disruptor.
I love it.
For a couple of reasons. First, when I first started working with DTE, this is 20 years ago, as a marketing professor, I was appalled by, quote unquote, the mindset at DTE because the term customer was never used. The term was called rate payer. So the fact that DTE has shifted its own mindset culturally from these are rate payers, we are producers of electricity, to we are stewards of the environment, we are energy providers, and we are serving customers and other important stakeholders. That was a huge mindset shift at DTE. I also like how MIGreenPower captures a mindset shift away from simple, we produce electricity, we sell electricity, to something bigger, more entrepreneurial spirit, developing programs which can serve many different stakeholders in the ecosystem of Greater Metro Detroit. And I love how it reflects how your mindset about leadership, your mindset about teamwork, your mindset about entrepreneurship, this program captured, it seems to me, your mindset and how you've approached your life. It has been such a delight, Knox, to see you again,
Of course.
to speak with you and hear a little bit more about your career here at Michigan and also at DTE. Congratulations on all of your success in both professions, right? The professional soccer and now professional executive within the utilities space. Folks, thank you for joining me, Professor John Branch, for another episode of Breaking Schemas. I look forward to seeing you on our next program. Until then, take care, and as always, go blue.